the rescuers. So there's a way to go yet, but it is really good news that we're starting to see people come through those difficult passages and get out of that cave. But I would caution people just to be, a little bit careful because we've still got an awful lot of people that have got to come out of that cave, and obviously we've still yet to see the remaining members of the team to come through.
Okay, so you've been part of a rescue team, as I said earlier, took place in Mexico City. How closely does that event resemble what we're seeing now in Thailand?
Well, in some ways, it's very similar. So we rescued a group of 6 cavers from a similar situation who was sumped in a cave. The big difference was that it was part of a contingency plan. Although it was a rescue, we were aware that that cave flooded. We'd had a data logger in that particular cave for 3 years before we actually went in there, and we knew it flooded to the roof. So we had a camp already set up in case of emergency. We had lines laid to allow those people to come out through that cave. And we also had Rick and another a diver on standby in the UK should that happen. So the difference was we were slightly more prepared because we knew that particular cave flooded.
I mean, there are so many teams from around the world involved in this. Are the right, well, I don't want to say that, but in terms of cave diving, where do you go first for expertise?
Well, the obvious answer for me was Rick Stanton. And we knew that nearly 14 years ago, and the situation hasn't really changed, although there are some really good cave divers all over the world, but it's quite a close-knit community. And is there a number where you can dial for a cave dive rescue? Probably not. So it's an interesting thought. But if you're sort of caving at the level that we certainly were in Mexico, there were enough members of my team that understood who to ring, and obviously we'd arranged that beforehand.
Okay, we're hearing a lot about a plan, a diving plan. What's involved in one of those? Can you just take us through?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you need to know the cave in detail, and Rick would have done that when he first moved in to find those, to find the members of the team. But you would need to find how long you were submerged, how complex that cave system is. And we've seen a lot on the news about how tight it was and how difficult it was. And that would have been a big part of the plan. Can you move people in there? And of course, the other thing you've got to consider is the safety of the rescuer. Because if you're moving somebody through an environment like that who's not used to it, then it's as dangerous for the rescuer as it is for the person being rescued, particularly if that person starts to panic, loses the line, or even worse, gets everybody disorientated. So all of that needs to be considered, and you need to train for it. I mean, we trained on the far side of the sump. I hadn't trained members of the team that I had before we went to Mexico, those people that were trapped. But before we dived them through, we trained them in the cave, in water, to make sure that we understood how they reacted before we even considered bringing them out using diving.
Steve, just to let you know very quickly, and our viewers, we're just looking at scenes of, at the scene now in Tam Luang, of rescuers with those lit helmets walking away and around the site itself. A few minutes ago we also saw a number of ambulances moving. As far as the rescuers, what are they carrying? They've got bags, red sweatshirts on as well. Some of them have got their torches on. Just going back again to what you've said about training children or training people before bringing them through and completing that rescue. What exactly do you look for? I mean, how on earth do you begin a crash course in cave diving in an emergency situation?
Well, you have to put them in the gear that they'll be moving through the cave through, and you find a safe piece of water which isn't submerged, i.e. isn't covered by a cave passage above, and you put them underwater and you see how they react. I mean, essentially what we'd planned in Mexico, we had a dive line laid across the base of the cave, which effectively what we did for the people that we rescued is we put an awful lot of weight on them, and they crawled. They didn't swim, they crawled, and they followed the rope all the way out of the cave. Now, they may well have used the same method, because the moment you make them neutrally buoyant, and that means that they can float around, they're more difficult to manage. But you make that assessment on the far side of the sump. You put them in the equipment, you see how they perform in that water, and then they're not diving straight into the unknown. They understand what's going on. They can see that they can be looked after, and you reassure them, obviously, with presence, because you can't talk to people. And they get to know that actually it's okay. And once you've got their trust, you can then start to bring them out. It's quite difficult.
Yeah, talking about trust, how do you communicate with somebody who's inexperienced once that dive is underway?
Well, you can't. You've just got to be present. You've got to have your hand on their arm or on their hand. They've got to feel you, because they certainly won't be able to see you, certainly in that muddy water. So they must know you're there, and they must trust you. And to develop that trust is very difficult in that short period of time. But a short dive in preparation before they're put into harm's way made a big difference for us. And I can only assume that they've followed a similar sort of path.
So once you've got the person out of the cave, obviously these boys have been in there for nearly a fortnight. There'll be some light sensitivity, for example, in their eyes. What sort of medical plans are put in place? What did you do in Mexico?
Well, the human body adapts very quickly, and actually the biggest shock that the people in our party had when they came out was the level of interest, the world's interest in what had happened to them. It wasn't a medical thing; it was a psychological thing to know that they were, in our case, on the news every day for 10 days in the Western world. And that was a big thing. They were sort of going, well, what's all the fuss about? This was a plan we'd already enacted. And I suspect the members of the football team will be feeling the same. It's like, wow, they'll be amazed that there's so many people involved. They'll be amazed that the military are there. They'll be amazed that all of those people are around that cave or in the vicinity of that cave. Regarding the medical, I mean, it's just a checkup. You just need to make sure that they're fit and healthy. And they're, young lads, footballers, probably reasonably fit. They probably need a good meal and some good water, rehydration, and they'll be right as rain. But psychologically, it'll be quite interesting to see how they cope when they realise just how much interest the world has had in their situation.
Would somebody who's been rescued under such conditions normally have psychological help in place? Is it advisable?
I don't know, particularly with the age of the youngsters involved here. It's something that they will have to look at, because obviously they might have problems associated with confined spaces or water. But if it's done in a positive way, if they've got out and actually it hasn't led to any sort of trauma, then actually they probably will get over it quite quickly. Most young people, I believe, are pretty resilient. So I shouldn't think there'll be any long-term effects.
Just to go back again very quickly, you mentioned some of the training that took place, and you mentioned the equipment. Yes. How heavy is that equipment? And would the boys have been dressed in proper, wet suits? Would they need that because of the water? Or is water quite warm in Thai caves?
I don't know the actual temperature, but you will find that the average temperature of a cave, and probably the water associated with that cave, is the average temperature of the country that you're in. So being in Thailand, I would imagine that water would probably be in the 20s, sort of early 20s, 21, 22 degrees C. And you can do pretty well without a wetsuit in that temperature. And the equipment is fairly heavy, but I'm sure that they managed that, and they managed it in a way to make sure that those youngsters may not have carried the equipment themselves, or if they did, it would be something that they can manage. And as I say, it's really advantageous in that sort of situation that people don't actually swim, because if they do swim, they get lost. But if they are heavy, you can place them on the floor, the diver knows where they are, the rescue diver can then move around them, and they can't easily move away. That's actually a real advantage. And then you know where those divers are and you know what they're up to.
We've heard mention of this idea of sedating, the possibility of sedating the boys to calm them down. Is that something you've ever come across in a cave diving, or you've heard of in a cave diving rescue?
No, I haven't personally. I don't know. I suspect anybody that's sedated in any way needs careful management. And okay, I understand why people might have said that, but obviously that gives you an additional problem, because not only have you got to monitor them breathing and all the rest of it, you've got to worry about them medically as well. You know, whether you've done that in the right way. So it's not anything I've thought of or seen, but I can understand why people think it might be a good idea.
Stephen, finally, obviously water pumping and drilling has been going on around this whole site. Would that have added a lot of weakness to the mountain range and the cave system? And I presume some of the pumping would have taken place. Would you be happy as a rescuer to go into a system like that, knowing that had taken place? Or, you know, does the weakness add a real risk?
No, I mean, the mountains in where those caves are, it's all limestone. I mean, it's like Swiss cheese. It's been there for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years in the form that it is. It's not going to fall down. It's not going to be affected by drilling or pumping. Certainly no more than water affecting the system in the normal sequence of events throughout a year. So no, that wouldn't worry me at all.
Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Whitlock, it has been fascinating. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, a lot of reaction from around the world taking place. As we heard, and as I've said earlier, this is an international story, an international rescue operation as well. And we're hearing now from the US, in fact, from President Donald Trump, who will be visiting the UK next week. He's tweeted saying the US is working very closely with the government of Thailand to help get all of the children out of the cave and to safety. Very brave and talented people. Must add, of course, that there are other countries involved in this rescue, including the UK, the US and Australia and the Thai people themselves, of course. You're watching BBC News. Those pictures you're seeing there around that rescue site at the cave entrance. Now, earlier, I spoke to our correspondent, Nick Beak, who's outside the Chiang Rai Hospital, where we believe the boys will have been taken to.
We've seen 2 ambulances race into this hospital. We don't know who exactly is inside, but we know that 3 ambulances left the cave complex, which is probably about an hour away from here. So they race along the road to this point. I can tell you, our best source at the moment for what is happening is probably the Thai Navy SEALs. And on their Facebook page, they have been providing regular updates as to what's been happening. Remember, they are the people who've been in the cave. They're the ones who've been taking videos and posting it of the boys who have been trapped. They say that 4 boys at this stage have been brought to safety from the cave complex an hour from here. So that is the word from them. Lots of other reports whirling around at the moment. We can't say for sure whether they are accurate, but certainly what we know is 2 ambulances here, and as I say, 4 boys brought to safety according to the unit, the elite unit, which has been spearheading this operation.
Nick, what are the primary concerns for the children's health as they're brought to the hospitals? Do we know what sort of plan has been put in place?
Well, the officials here, the doctors and nurses, haven't been speaking publicly about what they have been planning here, but clearly they've had some time to prepare for this. They know exactly how many people they need to be treating potentially. Also, remember that ever since the boys have been found at the start of last week, they've had a doctor with them who's been able to assess their medical condition on an hourly basis, you would imagine. We heard the officials here in this part of northern Thailand say this morning that the boys were strong enough, they were mentally fit to embark on this rescue attempt. So clearly a decision was made to go with this relative break in the weather to try and embark on a successful rescue. So in terms of how the individual boys will be treated, we haven't got that information at the moment, but clearly they know the ages of the boys, their conditions over the past week or so, and so you'd imagine there is a tailor-made plan for each of these young footballers, as hopefully they all emerge to safety and they're treated here and ultimately reunited with their families.
And that helicopters, we understand, Nick, that helicopters had been put on standby. That was one of the plans in terms of getting those boys to hospital as soon as possible. Why is it then that they've used ambulances?
Well, I think there's probably one for the medical teams. They would have been doing dynamic risk assessments, as they call it. We imagine that the boys probably were assessed after the first and hardest part of this rescue attempt. That was the stumbling block, really. The caves are so narrow, flooded in parts, and they were really concerned that they'd be able to bring the boys safely through these winding, very narrow passageways and corridors. They were probably assessed after that first point, and a decision made that they would continue with the rest of the rescue operation. As for helicopters, clearly they're a much quicker option, but if a decision was made that bringing them here by road was the best option, they've gone with that clearly. We did see a helicopter take off earlier from the site. Not yet clear who was in that and what sort of role that was playing in this rescue operation.
Okay, that was Dan Johnson. Now, what we can see here at Tam Luang is the local governor of the province. We are working on getting a translation to find out the latest, the very latest regarding this rescue operation. But just to let you know, when he first sat down and started speaking, we were able to hear a huge cheer from the press gathered at this press conference. So as soon as we know in terms of numbers and the status of the rescue operation, we will update you. But what we can tell you is that 90, sorry, my fault, I do apologise, 90 divers are currently involved in this operation. 50 foreign divers and 40 Thai divers involved in rescuing these 12 boys and their coach. They have been in that cave system now for almost a fortnight. They were in there from June the 23rd. The latest confirmation we had was that 4 of the boys had exited, had managed to be rescued, rather, from that cave system. We're not too sure what condition they were in when they came out, but what we can confirm is that part of the medical plan that had been put in place showed that those boys would have been put in ambulances. We saw the ambulances leave that rescue site, and they, we understand, have been taken to the local or the district hospital in Chiang Rai, and it's the Prachanuroka Hospital. It's about an hour's away by car. They did also have the option of using helicopters. There was an ambulance for each boy, a number of helicopters on location as well, but the weather hindered that extraction to the hospital. So they were taken by road. We understand in terms of choosing which boys to get out of there first, they took the weakest of the boys. So the first boy reportedly left that cave at 5:40 local time. The time now is 10 to 9. Now, let me just put that into local time BST. So we got news of that first rescue just after 1 o'clock British summertime. So a lot of analysts are saying that this rescue has actually taken place a lot faster than anticipated, a lot faster than we'd been told. We'd expected the first of the boys to be brought out of there by 3 p.m. and that is British summertime. So here we go, more ambulances moving around that site at Tham Luang. In terms of the rescue itself, I mean, those boys would have had to travel underwater diving for about 1 kilometre. It's not all underwater, but it's the route that was treacherous that caused the most concern, because at times they would have had to remove some of that kit, and we're talking here about the divers themselves, because the boys would have been attached to the expert divers by a breathing line. So the divers not only would have had to watch those boys to ensure that they were calm, they did not panic, because that is the greatest danger to bring in those boys out alive, but they also had to make sure that those air tanks were passed through these narrow passages carefully. The boys were then brought through, the air tanks reattached, and the rescue would have continued. There would have been a couple of stops on the way where they would have been allowed to walk, they would have been checked over before they would have continued towards the entrance of the cave itself. Now, getting in there some of the statistics, it would have taken around 6 hours. Remember that they're going in there with a lot of equipment. 6 hours for the rescue team to get in. They would have been walking, they would have been swimming and diving as well. The estimation is that it would take about 5 hours to get the boys out. So the confirmation, if you're just joining us here on BBC News, is that 4 of the 12 boys that have been trapped in that cave system in Tam Luang cave in northern Thailand have been brought out. I'm optimistic, I'm going to say safely brought out, but what we do know is that they have been taken to a hospital. Rescue plans were put in place and also plans to get those children straight to hospital. In terms of the logistics and the rescue team, an incredible 90 divers are part of this rescue team. Remember, you need the divers themselves, you need support divers as well. 50 foreign divers are involved from around the world. President Trump has tweeted saying that the US, of course, are supporting events taking place, the rescue operation in Thailand. 40 Thai local divers are involved. But in terms of moving on to the next stage of the rescue workers, we understand, will need up to 10 hours to prepare for the next stage of this operation. So there could be a pause in events and further news coming out. But we understand that from one exit of boys to the next, a 10-hour gap is needed for the rescue team to prepare before they can go back in to bring the next team of young boys out. You're watching BBC News. Stay with us, more coming up. Let's find out how the weather's looking. Here's Nick Miller.
Hi, Luquessa. Our forecast, well, it's a hot one again today for most of us. Temperatures in the hot spots have peaked above 30 Celsius. It's quite humid the further south you are in the UK, but many places are seeing spells of very warm, hot sunshine. This was a view earlier from Cornwall. Gorgeous blue sky, but there's more cloud around towards Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of Northern England. I say, but you might look at that and go, oh, I'd love to get some rain out of that for the gardens, perhaps the fields. There's hardly any rain coming, just 1 or 2 light showers here and there. Those are your temperatures now for the rest of
Want real news right now? We've got the app for that.
Welcome to CBSN. We are streaming live.
Stream live breaking news anywhere you go with CBSN. Key interviews, revealing documentaries, and original reporting you can't get anywhere else.
This is a CBS News special report.
Download the CBS News app on your phone, tablet, your smart TV, even your game console. Or go to cbsnews.com, just hit live. CBSN, CBS News, always on.
.600 miles on foot from the edge of Antarctica through to the South Pole itself. We are going to survive only on renewable energy.
It's an act of taking the responsibility and the call to action in relation to climate, in relation to the environment.
I'm taking a fearful battering today from all sides.
I can't imagine how much pain that man is in.
All it takes is that 1 degree too far and you can die.
If we can survive out there only on renewable energy in the most hostile place on Earth, people can make a difference.
Want real news right now? We've got the app.
In murky waters. It's understood a total of 90 have been involved in the operation. Hello and welcome to BBC World News. Reports from northern Thailand say at least 4 boys from the group trapped in the flooded cave have been brought out. A major operation involving international divers and elite members of the Thai Navy has been taking place to free the 12 boys and their football coach. They became stranded a fortnight ago when the tunnels became waterlogged by the rain. Well, let's speak to our correspondent Nick Beek, who is at the hospital. Nick, what more can you tell us about the condition of those boys?
Well, Creeper, this is the main hospital in the Chiang Rai region. It's about an hour by car from the cave complex where the boys have been rescued from today. 4 boys. I'm just looking now, probably some sort of military vehicle there. In the past 90 minutes or so, we've seen 2 ambulances arrive here. The railings were moved away, the traffic was stopped, and those 2 ambulances raced through to the main entrance to the hospital. We've also seen police helicopters, or certainly helicopters involved in the rescue, that have been flying overhead. And yes, the crucial information to bring you comes from a press conference in the last few minutes, but also from the Thai Navy SEALs, the elite unit. Their divers have been involved in this rescue, and they say that 4 of the boys have been brought out now. As for their condition, you asked me that, we don't know at this point. Clearly the teams here have been waiting for their arrival, but in terms of how the individual boys are faring, that's something we don't know at the moment.
Is there any idea what kind of immediate treatment they might be receiving, because they haven't seen light, for example, for a number of days?
Well, I think the thing to remember is they've had for nearly a week now a doctor with them. A doctor was able to get to the cave where they were stranded and was able to assess them on a daily basis. And remember, last night, the former governor here in charge of the rescue operation said that the boys were strong enough to embark on this rescue attempt. So clearly a decision was made there. We have had some detail from the doctors and nurses here, and they say that there is a special unit within this hospital which has been set aside for the boys. We don't know whether it's individual cubicles, but certainly specialist teams on hand. They'll be carrying out, they said, the basic observational checks, so blood tests, urine tests, other sort of normal things you'd expect. Of course, that is if it's the very best outcome here, if the boys were able to move through the caves, walk a part of the way, and then essentially get onto a stretcher and be brought here. Clearly, if they're in more difficulty, if their condition is weaker than that, the many specialists they have here will have a much tougher job. But in terms of any sort of treatment going on now, that's not clear.
Certainly reassuring that they have made their way to the hospital. And I can only imagine the degree of relief on the part of the families. Is there any word from them?
Well, we don't know whether the families are here at the moment. Certainly, for the past 2 weeks, we've seen them in different places around the cave complex. They've been in their own sort of tucked away area where they've been kept up to date with the very latest information. And of course, today they would have been the first to know. They would have been given all the updates from the divers, the rescue teams, as they started this operation and decided to continue with it. So it may be that family members are inside now. We don't know whether they are, and we don't know whether they've been able to see their loved ones yet. But clearly a dreadful ordeal for them. 2 weeks now they've been having to cope with this. At first there was the dreadful sensation of not knowing what had happened. For 9 days those boys were trapped, and finally it were those 2 British amateur divers who were able to locate them and then basically tell the world that they had been found. So in terms of the reaction from the families, that's something we haven't seen yet. But you know, this is still in its early days. Only 4 boys we know so far have been brought to safety. 13 were in that party, so clearly a long way to go.
And we are watching for developments very, very closely here. Taking a step back, this has really brought the country together, hasn't it? I mean, we here are utterly gripped. I can only imagine how emotionally charged things are there in Thailand.
Thailand as a nation has been praying for the best here, fearing the worst. Talk to the people who live here, and they are as one. They are so determined that these boys should be rescued. We met some of the well-wishers, the volunteers at the site. They created a community there over the last 2 weeks, and the sense of optimism when they heard that the boys had been located, that was incredible. There was an energy which flowed through that site, and really that sustained so many people who were working extremely long shifts. So you look in the eyes of some of the rescuers, the divers, they were absolutely shattered, but they continued. They said they'd keep going for as long as it takes, and clearly if we have the news in the coming hours that all of these boys have been able to be brought out to safety, there will be utter jubilation here. But we are a long way to go. 4 boys so far, 13 in all. This is very much the focus for the coming hours.
I'm assuming this is going to go on throughout the night.
Yeah, absolutely. We just got a press conference from the authorities in this part of northern Thailand. They gave us an update on some of the immediate details. We've been listening to colleagues at the scene, at the cave complex, about an hour by car from here, and they've seen the various ambulances drive past them out towards the main road here. We've also seen the helicopters take off, so we do expect more boys to be brought here, certainly as and when more boys are taken out. But remember, this is going to be an extremely long operation, because we've heard that to reach the boys where they were and back again, that's taken divers, some of them with 30 years experience, 11 hours. So this is a huge journey, and I can tell you, during the week we were able to go to a cave about 10 kilometers away from the actual spot where the boys were trapped and the rescue operation was taking place. We got a glimpse of that place, and I can tell you it was claustrophobic, it was hot, the water there was murky. If it was flooded in parts, there would have been absolutely no visibility whatsoever. We got some information earlier from the Thai Navy teams. They're explaining that each boy would be ushered, as it were, sherped through by 2 expert divers. So the boys really would feel, they'd feel their presence as they were moved all the way through. There was a guide rope that was set up, and so rather than be able to look where you're going, people were able to move their way through bit by bit. And also, of course, the corridors are so narrow here. That was all part of the problem. And it wasn't just going out at one angle. They were going up, they were going down, and some of the best cave divers in the world were saying this was a tough challenge for them. And remember, some of these boys couldn't swim. So you can only imagine how they were feeling this morning about 10 o'clock local time when the decision was made that they would embark on this rescue attempt. That is an incredibly difficult situation, but we believe last night they thought, yes, this has to happen. The rain has started in the last day or so after 3 or 4 days of glorious sunshine here, which has really helped them, because remember, they were pumping out so much water, which really brought the water level down. They thought they had a golden opportunity to go for this. They have gone for it, and we wait to see the outcome of it.
Okay, Nick Beek there at the hospital. Thank you for your insights. Do keep us posted. Our correspondent Dan Johnson is in Tam Luang near the exit of the tunnel. Dan, night has fallen there. What is the latest?
It's actually just falling quiet here. There's been a lot of activity in the last few minutes, but it looks like people are leaving this site for the night, and we have just got confirmation from that press conference that is going on that 4 of the boys have been rescued from the cave and that the operation has concluded for the night. So they're going to leave the rest where they are. We understand the others haven't even started the journey out yet. They wanted to take a group of 4 first to see if they could safely make it out, and it looks like they've achieved that. It is an incredible feat. It's giving everyone here a positive feel that this is possible, that they can bring all these people out safely. But one thing to bear in mind is the tiredness levels of the cave diving experts who are leading this investigation, this operation. They have been working busily all day, and it looks like those are some of the dive teams actually leaving the site now. There are 18 specialist divers who've been guiding the boys out, and as you heard there, it takes many hours just to get one boy to the exit of the cave. So it looks like they've taken the decision that they've done as much as they can for today. Everyone needs to take a rest so that they're not doing this job when they're too tired, and we're told they will come back fresh in the morning to start this operation again at about 8 a.m. But everyone really is now positive that they've proven this rescue method can work, that they can actually teach these boys enough about scuba diving so that they are comfortable with the conditions down there, with the task that they have to complete, the track that they have to navigate, the path out of this cave through those flooded underwater caverns. A really tricky thing for any cave diver to accomplish, but it looks like at least 4 of these boys have been able to make it so far, and the expectation is that more now will follow tomorrow.
It looks like a hive of activity behind you there. Could you just give us a taste of exactly what is going on?
Yes, this very much has the feel of things winding down here now. That's been the case for about the last half an hour, 45 minutes, with really a flood of workers who left the site after the last ambulance that we saw. It was around 2 hours ago that we saw the first ambulance drive out just where that car's leaving now, with lights flashing. It headed off presumably to the hospital that you heard Nick reporting from, and that was followed by another 3 ambulances that left with lights on. We've seen other ambulances leave but without the lights flashing, so it looks like the 4 boys were taken separately in those ambulances with the lights flashing. Other ambulances have left the site, but that must be possibly is just them moving away for the night, and then everyone will return here tomorrow morning to restart the rescue effort to get everyone else out. But they said today was D-Day. This was their opportunity to go for it. They were going to try their best to put this rescue plan into action. They've done that. They've proven that it can work for the 4 who've got out so far. But everyone here is aware that there are still risks with this operation. There is still a lot of work to do. It will still be tricky getting the remaining boys and their coach out of that cave tomorrow, possibly into the day after.
Yeah, you talk about exhaustion levels. How will it work tomorrow? Will there be a tag team kind of format going in, so another set of divers going into the caves?
No, we believe it will be the same core team, because the expertise and experience required to manage a rescue mission like this are so limited. There are only a few people who have experience diving so deep, so far underground in a cave this big. They've come from all around the world. There are 5 or 6 nationalities involved in that 18-strong team that is at the core of this rescue effort. So I think those people with that experience in these conditions are the ones who've been calling the shots here. They're the ones who've assessed whether the boys were actually ready to start making this journey, and they have guided the mission today for those first 4 boys, taking care of them all along the way and taking their time as well. No one wanted to rush this. No one wanted to get things wrong. So it looks like now they're taking a well-earned break and will come back fresh tomorrow. There's a big support team here, of course, loads of soldiers from the Thai military, divers from the Thai Navy, but the Navy was candid that it just didn't have the experience of working in these conditions, so it's welcomed the international support that there has been, but they've got to use that experience wisely, and I think the rationale is that there's no point tiring everyone out, no point wasting that experience and energy. Let everyone take their time, take their care, come back tomorrow knowing that this rescue method can succeed, and hoping that they can make that happen for the rest of the people who are stuck in that cave. But certainly it's going to need more time, and there are still risks. It's raining slightly now, and one risk was always that if the rain got heavier, the water levels in there would start increasing again. The man in charge of the operation said if that happened, they would speed things up. They would move more quickly to get people out as soon as possible. But for the moment, it looks like they're taking care, they're putting the plan into operation, and it is succeeding.
Now, we know that at least 4 of those boys have been taken to hospital. How did they decide which boys to bring out first?
Well, they've had doctors in the cave over the weekend assessing the condition of the boys. So the cave diving experts have been assessing their strength, their confidence, their ability with the scuba diving equipment. But they've also had medical examinations as well to assess the impact of this 2-week ordeal, 2 weeks underground without proper food. They were 9 or 10 days before they were even discovered, where they didn't eat at all. So they've definitely suffered because of this ordeal. They are weakened, but the officials in charge of the operation thought that they'd got to a sufficient point today where they were ready to at least start getting them out. We understand they've started with the weakest, actually. We don't know if that means the ones who are weakest in terms of strength or weakest in terms of getting to grips with the scuba diving technique. But they started with the weakest boys who they thought needed to come out first, and they've put a small group together. We were told that it would be a small group that came out at a time. It looks like they've started with 4. They've got them out. They were taken by ambulance, or there is also the option of helicopters that have been here on standby. We haven't heard or seen the helicopters this close because they have to be a certain distance away to find enough flat land. So I'm not quite sure exactly how they all got to the hospital, but they were on their way pretty quickly to get that treatment. And no doubt this will take some recovering from the initial shock of it and the impact that the last 2 weeks will have had, and the emotional effect as well. Everyone here is aware that if the rest are able to leave that cave safely, that isn't the end of this. There will be a lot of work to do afterwards for these boys to actually come to terms with what's happened and to get over it, to deal with it. But at the moment, the hopes are that the rest of the group can get out safely and join them tomorrow, perhaps into the day after.
OK, Dan Johnson there, our correspondent on the ground. Thank you for your time. Well, let's speak to Amy Sowita Lefevre, the Deputy Bureau Chief of Reuters in Thailand. She joins me now from Bangkok. Tell me what the latest is that you're hearing there on the ground in Bangkok.
Well, the head of the rescue mission has just finished that press conference, and we're hearing the same. We're hearing that the operation is over. The head of the rescue mission said for about 10 hours. They need 10 hours to set up for the next operation. So it looks like it'll be just those 4 boys who are coming out of the cave tonight, and they've been transferred to hospital. Now, our reporter at the hospital says that all 4 boys have landed in Chiang Rai by the hospital. They've been taken there, and they're expected to be kept and monitored there for quite some time.
Now, you are based in Thailand, and I'm interested to better understand from you how this has impacted the nation and how it's brought the country together.
I mean, this is a politically divided country, and it has been for more than a decade. Pro and anti-government protests have basically dotted the last couple of years. But this is an event brought different political groups together. It's really united the country. We've seen an outpouring of messages, positive messages, messages of support for the boys on Thai social media. So it's definitely an event that has united an otherwise divided country.
Yeah.
And a good public relations exercise for the ruling military government, which has been in power for more than 4 years now. If they manage to get all of these boys out safely and alive, then it'll be a huge bonus, a huge plus for this government.
I'm interested in learning more about that because what has been the reaction in your understanding to how the government has reacted to this operation so far? Have the rescue team been happy with the government's efforts?
Well, yes, it seems that they have. This has been primarily an operation, at least on the Thai side, led by the military, led by the army, the Thai Navy SEALs, and the police. And it's very much united armed forces that we've seen in this operation. And the government has taken or has played a big role. So far, positive feedback, positive reaction to the effort so far, and also the international and to the rescue effort, deeply appreciated by the Thai government and people.
OK, Amy, we shall leave it there. That's Amy Sowita Lefevre from Reuters in Thailand. Just to remind you of our breaking news story, at least 4 of the 12 boys trapped in a cave system in Thailand have been rescued. The divers are breaking for the night before resuming operations again. Let's look back at the day's events now with this report from Simon Jones.
Ambulances arrive at hospital. One of the first signs that hours into this unprecedented operation, the first boys have been rescued after being trapped for more than 2 weeks. Today was named D-Day by the authorities, who declared the boys and their coach were ready to move. And with fears of rising waters, officials decided they could wait no longer.
This morning, 13 professional cave divers entered the cave to carry out the extraction of the kids, including 5 Navy SEALs. They have been clearly briefed on how the extraction would be carried out.
The boys were said to be determined and focused, physically and mentally fit. Expert divers have been guiding them out through darkness and submerged passageways towards the mouth of the cave. It's involved a mixture of walking, wading, climbing and diving. Their families agreed they should be moved as soon as possible. Several hours into the operation, the emergency vehicles near the cave entrance showed progress had been made. The first group out quicker than expected. But the operation continues, the relief that the first boys have been rescued tempered with the knowledge of the challenges still ahead. Simon Jones, BBC News.
Coordinating the rescue mission are 2 British cave diving experts, John Volathan and Richard Stanton. Martin Farr knows the pair and is an expert himself. He said the operation seemed to be going very well. He spoke to my colleague earlier, Luquesa Burak, and this is what he told him.
This is absolutely fantastic news. The boys are starting to come out of the cave. That will be a massive morale booster, and it obviously is an indicator that things are going very well at this point in time. But clearly, it's a big ask for everyone involved, and we all understand how critical this weather window. It's shrinking as we speak, but the right people are doing the right things, and I'm optimistic that things will carry on like this.
OK, you mentioned the weather there. Clearly, you have some reservations. You have the experience. What are your primary concerns?
Well, like everyone else watching the programme, we all know if you have a torrential downpour, we've seen images of the current in the cave today. Now, that would be a major problem for everyone if that rainfall intensifies in the very near future.
For all of us, in fact, for the world, this has been a crash course in cave diving. We've heard about the quite treacherous conditions the boys are having to face.
Yeah.
For a child to go into the caves, but then for a child to cave dive, what would be your reservations?
It's extremely challenging. There is no doubt about that at all. But the images we're seeing of the youngsters clearly show them in good morale, in great morale. And yes, I'm quite sure that they are taking to this activity remarkably well, judging by the speed of the evacuation of the first people.
Now, John and Richard are out there. They're adding their expertise to the operation. Have you heard any news from themselves?
No. Well, I won't say unfortunately. It would obviously be great to speak with them, but we all appreciate every friend and family member of the British divers out there will understand they are totally concentrating on the job that has to be done, and they can't afford any distraction from getting that job done. They are the best rescue team that possibly could be pulled up in this instant, but I'm sure they're going to carry on doing a fantastic job.
Martin, we've heard about the training and the practicing and the rehearsals that would have taken place. How important is a diving plan in something like this?
I'm sure everybody out there has been formulating this plan for many days, and clearly the plan is working.
How many plans would there be?
I'm sure there have been quite a number of plans, and the weather window, this narrow time slot that we have confronting the team, well, this has sort of precipitated the action, as we all know. But this emergency, this narrow time slot, will have been planned for, and everything is going well.
Martin, when you're down there, obviously communication tactics are important amongst adults. So what sort of things would be used, and then what would be used to communicate with the children?
Well, fortunately, there have been a number of Thai Navy SEALs going to the chamber, and I'm quite sure that all along the route there will be Thai rescue personnel to help with the communication difficulties, should there be communication difficulties.
Now, we heard about the possibility of a sedation of the boys to calm them down, to avoid the panic, which is the greatest danger in a rescue such as this. Is sedation really a possibility? I mean, what are the risks involved in something like that?
I'm not medically qualified to answer that, but I know certainly that some of the personnel on site are doctors, highly experienced doctors, highly experienced cave divers, and so if that option is required, I'm sure that the equipment, the knowledge, the expertise is there to get this job done.
Martin, if you are cave diving with an expert, a colleague, that's fair enough. If you're diving with somebody who's inexperienced, what sort of advice do you give to them before you enter a system like that to make sure that the dive continues safely?
Once they're under the water, they are either going to be, well, it's going to be difficult under the water because you have seen the situation yourself. The visibility is going to be very low, and we all hope that no panic will arise. So, judging by what we see of the youngsters, I am very optimistic. They're being particularly brave, and yeah, they are a credit to Thailand. They are absolutely great young people, and I'm confident that they can hold it together.
Well, some news coming in to us from the AFP news agency that the operation has paused for the night until tomorrow morning. They said that they need 10 hours to prepare for the next mission. I've spotted this tweet from the BBC's Jonathan Head in Thailand, and he says that the operation leader says that 4 boys are out, as we have been reporting. 9, including the coach, remain in their original location, and it could take another day to get them out. These are pictures from the hospital. We did hear from Nick Beak at the hospital a little earlier. From that same press conference that we've been hearing reports from, the operation chief did say that all 4 are in perfect condition. Of course, this has not been verified to us by medical officials or by our correspondent on the ground, but that is what we were told at the press conference. Night has, of course, fallen there. The streets are still very busy, and I'm sure, no doubt, inside those hospital walls, things are rather hectic as they ensure that those children are well and fit as well. Chris Boardman from the British Caving Association said the changing weather had forced the operation to get underway, but for the moment the conditions have been ideal.
The timing is effectively perfect. They've been draining the cave for as long as they know the children have been there, and they're acutely aware that the monsoon rains are literally due sometime today. So they had to move, and they've moved decisively. And I have so much respect for the rescue personnel, for the divers who have come from so many nations, for the Thai Navy SEALs, but also for the children themselves who really have stepped up to the mark here. And we know that they won't have had to have dived the whole distance, not by any means. Because of the drainage that they've been able to do, they'll have been able to walk and crawl some of the distance, and that will have made life actually a lot easier, even though it is very physical. And as I say, my admiration to the children and to their rescuers.
How safe is cave diving for children?
Well, actually, cave diving for children in the UK is simply not allowed at all. If you were to ask to go diving under the age of 16 in a cave with anybody from the cave diving group, they would definitely say, no, you're just going to have to wait till you're a little bit older. I mean, obviously, you can learn to dive in warm water where it's ordinary diving, not in the caves. And then you could take those skills underground when you are older.
Okay, so you work within cave diving, British Caving Association. How do you make caving safe for children? I mean, are you hearing murmurings now from parents who had planned to send their children off on a summer holiday, you know, enjoying caving systems, now saying, well, actually, can we hold back?
Nary a word, actually, and I am this summer taking children caving in France. And as yet, nobody has asked me about it. I'm sure we will speak about it at some point in the coming few weeks. This has to do with picking a venue that is appropriate for the age and experience of the children. And that is no criticism at all of their football coach. He didn't really think he was going caving. He thought he was going to a tourist destination, what you would call a show cave, doing something that many, many hundreds, if not thousands of Thais would do with their families and friends on a fairly regular basis. And it just turns out that, in fact, this cave had a bit of a bite. And I'm quite certain that in the future there will be some thought given to some regulation and planning.
Well, let's just remind you of where we are with this breaking news story. The mission to rescue these boys started earlier this morning at around 3 o'clock in the morning UK time, so that would be 10 o'clock local time there on a Sunday. At least 4 boys we know are told to be in good health, according to the latest press conference that we heard from earlier. The rest remain trapped in the original location where they were found earlier this week. They were, of course, trapped by monsoon floods for over 2 weeks, and the operation is said to be a race against time. The hospital pictures there where those boys have been taken and are being treated by local doctors. Well, earlier, my colleague Luquesa Burak spoke to Lieutenant Colonel Steve Whitlock, who was part of a 2004 rescue mission in one of the world's biggest cave systems in Mexico City.
It's good news that we're starting to see people come out of the cave, but it's not over until it's over. You go through a period of seeing success, but the rescue isn't over until all of the people are out of the cave, including the rescuers. So there's a way to go yet, but it is really good news that we're starting to see people coming through those difficult passages and get out of that cave. But I would caution people just to be, a little bit careful because we've still got an awful lot of people that have got to come out of that cave, and obviously we've still yet to see the remaining members of the team to come through. Okay, so you've been part of a rescue team, as I said earlier, took place in Mexico City. How closely does that event resemble what we're seeing now in Thailand? Well, in some ways, it's very similar. So we rescued a group of 6 cavers from a similar situation who was sunk in a cave. The big difference was that it was part of a contingency plan. Although it was a rescue, we were aware that that cave flooded. We'd had a data logger in that particular cave for 3 years before we actually went in there, and we knew it flooded to the roof. So we had a camp already set up in case of emergency. We had lines laid to allow those people to come out through that cave. And we also had Rick and another a diver on standby in the UK should that happen. So the difference was we were slightly more prepared because we knew that particular cave flooded. I mean, there are so many teams from around the world involved in this. Well, I don't want to say that, but in terms of cave diving, where do you go first for expertise? Well, the obvious answer for me was Rick Stanton. And we knew that nearly 14 years ago, and the situation hasn't really changed, although there are some really good cave divers all over the world, but it's quite a close-knit community. And is there a number where you can dial for a cave dive rescue? Probably not. So it's an interesting thought. But if you're sort of caving at the level that we certainly were in Mexico, there were enough members of my team that understood who to ring, and obviously we'd arranged that beforehand.
OK, we're hearing a lot about a plan, a diving plan. What's involved in one of those? Can you just take us through?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you need to know the cave in detail, and Rick would have done that when he first moved in to find those, to find the members of the team. But you would need to find how long you were submerged, how complex that cave system is. And we've seen a lot on the news about how tight it was and how difficult it was. And that would have been a big part of the plan. Can you move people in there? And of course, the other thing you've got to consider is the safety of the rescuer. Because if you're moving somebody through an environment like that who's not used to it, then it's as dangerous for the rescuer as it is for the person being rescued, particularly if that person starts to panic, loses the line, or even worse, gets everybody disorientated. So all of that needs to be considered, and you need to train for it. I mean, we trained on the far side of the sump. I hadn't trained members of the team that I had before we went to Mexico, those people that were trapped. But before we dived them through, we trained them in the cave, in water, to make sure that we understood how they reacted before we even considered bringing them out using diving.
Steve, just to let you know very quickly, and our viewers, we're just looking at scenes of, at the scene now in Tam Luang, of rescuers with those lit helmets walking away and around the site itself. A few minutes ago, we also saw a number of ambulances moving. As far as the rescuers, what are they carrying? They've got bags, red sweatshirts on as well. Some of them have got their torches on. Just going back again to what you've said about training children or training people before bringing them through and completing that rescue. What exactly do you look for? I mean, how on earth do you begin a crash course in cave diving in an emergency situation?
Well, you have to put them in the gear that they'll be moving through the cave through, and you find a safe piece of water which isn't submerged, i.e. isn't covered by a cave passage above, and you put them underwater and you see how they react. I mean, essentially what we'd planned in Mexico, we had a dive line laid across the base of the cave, which effectively what we did for the people that we rescued is we put an awful lot of weight on them, and they crawled. They didn't swim, they crawled, and they followed the rope all the way out of the cave. Now, they may well have used the same method, because the moment you make them neutrally buoyant, and that means that they can float around, they're more difficult to manage. But you make that assessment on the far side of the sump. You put them in the equipment, you see how they perform in that water, and then they're not diving straight into the unknown. They understand what's going on. They can see that they can be looked after, and you reassure them, obviously, with presence, because you can't talk to people. And they get to know that actually it's okay. And once you've got their trust, you can then start to bring them out. It's quite difficult.
Yeah, talking about trust, how do you communicate with somebody who's inexperienced once that dive is underway?
Well, you can't. You've just got to be present. You've got to have your hand on their arm or on their hand. They've got to feel you, because they certainly won't be able to see you, certainly in that muddy water. So they must know you're there, and they must trust you. And to develop that trust is very difficult in that short period of time. But a short dive in preparation before they're put into harm's way made a big difference for us. And I can only assume that they've followed a similar sort of path.
So once you've got the person out of the cave, obviously these boys have been in there for nearly a fortnight. There'll be some light sensitivity, for example, in their eyes. What sort of medical plans are put in place? What did you do in Mexico?
Well, the human body adapts very quickly, and actually the biggest shock that the people in our party had when they came out was the level of interest, the world's interest in what had happened to them. It wasn't a medical thing; it was a psychological thing to know that they were, in our case, on the news every day for 10 days in the Western world. And that was a big thing. They were sort of going, well, what's all the fuss about? This was a plan we'd already already enacted. And I suspect the members of the football team will be feeling the same. It's like, wow, you know, they'll be amazed that there's so many people involved. They'll be amazed that the military are there. They'll be amazed that all of those people are around that cave or in the vicinity of that cave. Regarding the medical, I mean, it's just a checkup. You just need to make sure that they're fit and healthy. And they're, you know, young lads, footballers, probably reasonably fit. They probably need a good meal and some good water, rehydration, and they'll be right as rain. But psychologically, it'll be quite interesting to see how they cope when they realise just how much interest the world has had in their situation.
Would somebody who's been rescued under such conditions normally have psychological help in place? Is it advisable?
I don't know, particularly with the age of the youngsters involved here. It's something that they will have to look at because obviously they might have problems associated with confined spaces or water. But if it's done in a positive way, if they've got out and actually it hasn't led to any sort of trauma, then actually they probably will get over it quite quickly. Most young people, I believe, are pretty resilient. So I shouldn't think there'll be any long-term effects.
Just to go back again very quickly, you mentioned some of the training that took place and you mentioned the equipment. Yes. How heavy is that equipment? And would the boys have been dressed in proper, wetsuits? Would they need that because of the water? Or is water quite warm in Thai caves?
I don't know the actual temperature, but you will find that the average temperature of a cave and probably the water associated with that cave is the average temperature of the country that you're in. So being in Thailand, I would imagine that water would probably be in the 20s, sort of early 20s, 21, 22 degrees C. And you can do pretty well without a wetsuit in that temperature. And the equipment is fairly heavy, but I'm sure that they managed that, and they managed it in a way to make sure that those youngsters may not have carried the equipment themselves, or if they did, it would be something that they can manage. And as I say, it's really advantageous in that sort of situation that people don't actually swim, because if they do swim, they get lost. But if they are heavy, you can place them on the floor, the diver knows where they are, the rescue diver can then move around them, and they can't easily move away. That's actually a real advantage. And then you know where those divers are and you know what they're up to.
The possibility of...
Well, let's bring you some more lines from that press conference that I mentioned earlier. That was from the Thai head of the rescue operation. Now, he said that the rescue workers need about 10 hours to prepare for the next operation. He said that 90 divers, 50 foreign and 40 Thai people had been involved in the operation to remove those boys from the cave. The first boys were rescued from the cave and transferred by helicopter to the nearest hospital in Chiang Rai, and that's where we heard from Nick Beek a little earlier. Well, Dan Johnson is at the mouth of the cave in Tam Luang and gave us this update.
It's actually just falling quiet here. There's been a lot of activity in the last few minutes, but it looks like people are leaving this site for the night. And we have just got confirmation from that press conference that is going on that 4 of the boys have been rescued from the cave and that the operation has concluded for the night. So they're going to leave the rest where they are. We understand the others haven't even started the journey out yet. They wanted to take a group of 4 first to see if they could safely make it out, and it looks like they've achieved that. It is an incredible feat. It's giving everyone here a positive feel that this is possible, that they can bring all these people out safely. But one thing to bear in mind is the tiredness levels of the cave diving experts who are leading this investigation, this operation. They have been working busily all day, and it looks like those are some of the dive teams actually leaving the site now. There are 18 specialist divers who've been guiding the boys out, and as you heard there, it takes many hours just to get one boy to the exit of the cave. So it looks like they've taken the decision that they've done as much as they can for today. Everyone needs to take a rest so that they're not doing this job when they're too tired, and we're told they will come back fresh in the morning to start this operation again at about 8 a.m. But everyone really is now positive that they've proven this rescue method can work, that they can actually teach these boys enough about scuba diving so that they are comfortable with the conditions down there, with the task that they have to complete, the track that they have to navigate, the path out of this cave through those flooded underwater caverns, a really tricky thing for any cave diver to accomplish. But it looks like at least 4 of these boys have been able to make it so far, and the expectation is that more now will follow tomorrow.
It looks like a hive of activity behind you there. Could you just give us a taste of exactly what is going on?
Yes, this very much has the feel of things winding down here now. That's been the case for about the last half an hour, 45 minutes, with really a flood of workers who left the site after the last ambulance that we saw. It was around 2 hours ago that we saw the first ambulance drive out just where that car's leaving now, with lights flashing. It headed off presumably to the hospital that you heard Nick reporting from, and that was followed by another 3 ambulances that left with lights on. And we've seen other ambulances leave, but without the lights flashing. So it looks like the 4 boys were taken separately in those ambulances with the lights flashing. Other ambulances have left the site, but that must be possibly is just them moving away for the night, and then everyone will return here tomorrow morning to restart the rescue effort to get everyone else out. But they said today was D-Day. This was their opportunity to go for it. They were going to try their best to put this rescue plan into action. They've done that. They've proven that it can work for the 4 who've got out so far. But everyone here is aware that there are still risks with this operation. There is still a lot of work to do. It will still be tricky getting the remaining boys and their coach out of that cave tomorrow, possibly into the day after.
Yeah, you talk about exhaustion levels. How will it work tomorrow? Will there be a tag team kind of format going in, so another set of divers going into the caves?
No, we believe it will be the same core team, because the expertise and experience required to manage a rescue mission like this are so limited. There are only a few people who have experience diving so deep, so far underground in a cave this big. They've come from all around the world. There are 5 or 6 nationalities involved in that 18-strong team that is at the core of this rescue effort. So I think those people with that experience in these conditions are the ones who've been calling the shots here. They're the ones who've assessed whether the boys were actually ready to start making this journey, and they have guided the mission today for those first 4 boys, taking care of them all along the way and taking their time as well. No one wanted to rush this. No one wanted to get things wrong. So it looks like now they're taking a well-earned break and will come back fresh tomorrow. There's a big support team here, of course. Loads of soldiers from the Thai military, divers from the Thai Navy. But the Navy was candid that it just didn't have the experience of working in these conditions. So it's welcomed the international support that there has been, but they've got to use that experience wisely. And I think the rationale is that there's no point tiring everyone out, no point wasting that experience and energy. Let everyone take their time, take their care, come back tomorrow knowing that this rescue method can succeed, and hoping that they can make that happen for the rest of the people who are stuck in that cave. But certainly it's going to need more time, and there are still risks. It's raining slightly now, and one risk was always that if the rain got heavier, the water levels in there would start increasing again. The man in charge of the operation said if that happened, they would speed things up. They would move more quickly to get people out as soon as possible. But for the moment, it looks like they're taking care, they're putting the plan into operation, and it is succeeding.
Now, we know that at least 4 of those boys have been taken to hospital. How did they decide which boys to bring out first?
Well, they've had doctors in the cave over the weekend assessing the condition of the boys. So the cave diving experts have been assessing their strength, their confidence, their ability with the scuba diving equipment. But they've also had medical examinations as well to assess the impact of this 2-week ordeal, 2 weeks underground without proper food. They were 9 or 10 days before they were even discovered, where they didn't eat at all. So they've definitely suffered because of this ordeal. They are weakened, but the officials in charge of the operation thought that they'd got to a sufficient point today where they were ready to at least start getting them out. We understand they've started with the weakest, actually. We don't know if that means the ones who are weakest in terms of strength or weakest in terms of getting to grips with the scuba diving technique. But they started with the weakest boys who they thought needed to come out first, and they've put a small group together. We were told that it would be a small group that came out at a time. It looks like they've started with 4. They've got them out. They were taken by ambulance, or there is also the option of helicopters that have been here on standby. We haven't heard or seen the helicopters this close because they have to be a certain distance away to find enough flat land. So I'm not quite sure exactly how they all got to the hospital, but they were on their way pretty quickly to get that treatment. And no doubt this will take some recovering from the initial shock of it and the impact that the last last 2 weeks will have had, and the emotional effect as well. Everyone here is aware that if the rest are able to leave that cave safely, that isn't the end of this. There will be a lot of work to do afterwards for these boys to actually come to terms with what's happened and to get over it, to deal with it. But at the moment, their hopes are that the rest of the group can get out safely and join them tomorrow, perhaps into the day after.
Well, our correspondent Nick Beek has been outside the Chiang Rai hospital where the boys are being treated, and he gave me this update.
Well, Creeper, this is the main hospital in the Chiang Rai region. It's about an hour by car from the cave complex where the boys have been rescued from today. 4 boys. I'm just looking now, probably some sort of military vehicle there. In the past 90 minutes or so, we've seen 2 ambulances arrive here. The railings were moved away, the traffic was stopped, and those 2 ambulances raced through to the main entrance to the hospital. We've also seen police helicopters, or certainly helicopters involved in the rescue, that have been flying overhead. And yes, the crucial information to bring you comes from a press conference in the last few minutes, but also from the Thai Navy SEALs, the elite unit. Their divers have been involved in this rescue, and they say that 4 of the boys have been brought out now. As for their condition, you asked me that, we don't know at this point. Clearly the teams here have been waiting for their arrival, but in terms of how the individual boys are faring, that's something we don't know at the moment.
Is there any idea what kind of immediate treatment they might be receiving, because they haven't seen light, for example, for a number of days?
Well, I think the thing to remember is they've had for nearly a week now a doctor with them. A doctor was able to get to the cave where they were stranded and was able to assess them on a daily basis. And remember, last night, the former governor here in charge of the rescue operation said that the boys were strong enough to embark on this rescue attempt. So clearly a decision was made there. We have had some detail from the doctors and nurses here, and they say that there is a special unit within this hospital which has been set aside for the boys. We don't know whether it's individual cubicles, but certainly specialist teams on hand. They'll be carrying out, they said, the basic observational checks, so blood tests, urine tests, other sort of normal things you'd expect. Of course, that is if it's the very best outcome here, if the boys were able to move through the caves, walk a part of the way, and then essentially get onto a stretcher and be brought here. Clearly, if they're in more difficulty, if their condition is weaker than that, the many specialists they have here will have a much tougher job. But in terms of any sort of treatment going on now, that's not clear.
Certainly reassuring that they have made their way to the hospital. And I can only imagine the degree of relief on the part of the families. Is there any word from them?
Well, we don't know whether the families are here at the moment. Certainly, for the past 2 weeks, we've seen them in different places around the cave complex. They've been in their own sort of tucked away area where they've been kept up to date with the very latest information. And of course, today they would have been the first to know. They would have been given all the updates from the divers, the rescue teams, as they started this operation and decided to continue with it. So it may be that family members are inside now. We don't know whether they are. We don't know whether they've been able to see their loved ones yet. But clearly a dreadful ordeal for them. 2 weeks now they've been having to cope with this. At first there was the dreadful sensation of not knowing what had happened. For 9 days those boys were trapped, and finally it were those 2 British amateur divers who were able to locate them and then basically tell the world that they had been found. So in terms of the reaction from the families, that's something we haven't seen yet. But you know, this is still in its early days. Only 4 boys we know so far have been brought to safety. 13 were in that party, so clearly a long way to go.
And we are watching for developments very, very closely here. Taking a step back, this has really brought the country together, hasn't it? I mean, we here are utterly gripped. I can only imagine how emotionally charged things are there in Thailand.
Thailand as a nation has been praying for the best here, fearing the worst. Talk to the people who live here, and they are as one. They are so determined that these boys should be rescued. We met some of the well-wishers, the volunteers at the site. They created a community there over the last 2 weeks, and the sense of optimism when they heard that the boys had been located, that was incredible. There was an energy which flowed through that site, and really that sustained so many people who were working extremely long shifts. If you look in the eyes of some of the rescuers, the divers, they were absolutely shattered, but they continued. They said they'd keep going for as long as it takes, and clearly if we have the news in the coming hours that all of these boys have been able to be brought out to safety, there will be utter jubilation here, but we are a long way to go. 4 boys so far, 13 in all. This is very much the focus for the coming hours.
And assuming this is going to go on throughout the night.
Yeah, absolutely. We just got a press conference from the authorities in this part of northern Thailand. They gave us an update on some of the immediate details. We've been listening to colleagues at the scene, at the cave complex, about an hour by car from here, and they've seen the various ambulances drive past them out towards the main road here. We've also seen the helicopters take off, so we do expect more boys to be brought here, certainly as and when more boys are taken out. But remember, this is going to be an extremely long operation, because we've heard that to reach the boys where they were and back again, that's taken divers, some of them with 30 years experience, 11 hours. So this is a huge journey. And I can tell you, during the week, we were able to go to a cave about 10 kilometers away from the actual spot where the boys were trapped and the rescue operation was taking place. We got a glimpse of that place, and I can tell you it was claustrophobic, it was hot, the water there was murky. If it was flooded in parts, there would have been absolutely no visibility whatsoever. We got some information earlier from the Thai Navy teams. They're explaining that each boy would be ushered, as it were, sherped through by 2 expert divers. So the boys really would feel, they'd feel their presence as they were moved all the way through. There was a guide rope that was set up, and so rather than be able to look where you're going, people were able to move their way through bit by bit. And also, of course, the corridors are so narrow here. That was all part of the problem. And it wasn't just going out at one angle. They were going up, they were going down, and some of the best cave divers in the world were saying this was a tough challenge for them.
Well, let's just remind you as to how things have unfolded over the past 24 hours or so. The mission to rescue those 12 boys and their football coach began at around 10 o'clock local time. We know at least 4 boys have been brought to safety. They are currently at the local Chiang Rai hospital. For the time being, the operation has come to a close. And I've just seen a Facebook post from the Thai Navy SEALs wishing their supporters a good night as well. The operation will continue tomorrow morning. Plenty more on our website. There is a live page there. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, you will find me at Krupa Bhati.
Hello. Do you think the weather's either...
Hi, everyone. I'm Meg Oliver. Thank you for joining us. The rescue operation is finally underway in Thailand. The Thai Navy says 4 of the 12 young soccer players trapped in a flooded cave have been brought to safety so far. There are 8 kids left to save, along with their 25-year-old coach. They may have to wait a bit longer as crews prepare for the next phase of the operation. But for now, those who are out have been taken to hospitals for treatment and evaluation. It's tentative, but they are expected to be okay. That's despite more than 2 weeks stuck in place, often in the dark, with declining amounts of oxygen and limited resources. At first, the boys were missing. When they were found, crews discovered that getting them out would not be easy. Today's efforts are the culmination of several days of work in difficult conditions that claimed the life of at least 1 rescuer, and the danger is far from over. CBS News foreign correspondent Ben Tracy spoke with our Margaret Brennan this morning about the latest developments near the cave in Chiang Rai.
So far, this is the news that we had all been hoping to hear. These 4 boys now out of the cave after 16 very long days. We now believe that all 4 of them were transported to the hospital in Chiang Rai via helicopter and then ambulance. And we did see the head of this rescue operation gave a news conference. He said this was much more successful than they thought it would be, that it went very smoothly. He said from the time the boys exited the mouth of the cave to when they got on the helicopter was just 2 minutes. And he says that was 5 times faster than when they tried this in their rehearsals. So they are feeling very confident tonight that the first stage of this operation, getting 4 boys out of this cave, has gone extraordinarily well. Margaret?
Why did this rescue operation happen now, and what's next?
Well, you know, they really felt a sense of urgency. They felt like they had a very small window of time to attempt this. And keep in mind, this is not the preferred mode of doing this. This is a very dangerous operation to bring these young boys, they're just ages 11 to 16, out of this cave this way, the way that trained Navy SEALs would do it. The reason they did it is they felt with heavy rain, and it is raining here now again, heavy rain could flood that cave again and cut these boys off from supplies and from any sort of successful rescue. That potentially could mean that they would be in that cave for months on a very small piece of real estate that would shrink as the cave flooded. So they felt like they had a little window of opportunity with the weather. They felt the boys were in the right condition to withstand this operation. And so far, they have been right. These 4 boys have come out. We have every reason to believe that all 4 of them are alive. We do not have any sense of their actual condition in terms of what kind of shape they're in. They will now be evaluated at the hospital for about 3 to 5 days.
President Trump tweeted this morning that the U.S. is working closely with the government of Thailand to get the children out. He said very brave and talented people are at work here. What do we know about those efforts?
Yeah, you know, for the last week, we've been sitting outside the entrance to this cave, and we have seen U.S. military personnel there on the site. They have been there in various capacities as advisors, but we're also told that there were American divers in the water as part of this rescue. This was an international effort. You had a team of 18 divers, 5 of which were from Thailand. The rest of them were international. So you had the U.S., you had Britain, you had Australia. This is really something that has captivated the world, and countries all over the world send personnel there. Just being there on that site and seeing how many people showed up to help in so many different capacities, it's really quite striking, and I'm sure that is a big part of why this has been successful so far.
You know, Ben, this is so risky, this rescue, but the alternatives are so tough for some of those parents there who've been waiting to hear about their loved ones. I know you've been speaking with some of them. What are they thinking right now as this is underway?
I can only imagine. I mean, we talked to the father of one boy, the youngest boy in the cave. He's just 11 years old. His name is Titan. And we talked to his dad, and he said this has just been horrible. It's been nerve-wracking every day to sit there waiting for news. First, it was that they couldn't find the boys in the cave. Then once they found them, that sense of elation that all these parents had. But then to find out that this rescue mission was going to be horribly dangerous. So this has really been a roller coaster for these families. And I can tell you, out at that cave site, there was basically a tent where all the family members, most of the mothers, were just sitting in chairs watching TV coverage of this, waiting for some news about their sons. They today, we are told, were standing at the mouth of the cave as this operation was happening, and they will now be reunited with their sons at the hospital.
How much anger is there at the situation itself? I know these boys were being supervised. They had a soccer coach with them. He's been heavily criticized for putting them in this position in the first place. Is he really to blame here?
Yeah, well, let me set the scene for you here. I mean, this was a soccer team. They had finished their practice, and from what we have been told by multiple people here in Thailand, there was some sort of birthday celebration that was going on. That's the reason they were going to this cave. They were celebrating somebody's birthday. So they went into this cave. The coach apparently was with them. There are big signs outside this cave warning of the danger this time of year during the rainy season, that this cave floods and that it can be unsafe. So certainly that is something that this coach will have to address with these parents and with the larger community at some point. However, the coach did issue an apology from inside the cave via a letter to these parents. The parents and the kids were sending letters back and forth the other day, and in several of the letters, the parents went out of their way to say, "We don't blame you, coach. Please take care of our kids in there. We know you love them. We know you're trying to protect them." And we have heard reports that this coach, when they went in there with very little food, imagine they probably had some snacks on them because they had been playing soccer, he apparently gave all of his food and water to these kids to keep them alive until rescuers came. And we are told that he is in one of the weakest conditions of anyone in that cave. So certainly he has done his best while he's been in there. He apparently also taught them how to meditate, to try to keep them calm, to conserve their energy, and to not panic while they've been inside.
Such incredible reporting from our Ben Tracy in Thailand. Let's take you back now to the BBC for the latest.
Well, our correspondent Dan Johnson is in Tam Luang near the exit of the tunnel. And Dan, it looks like it's raining. That's not good news.
It started raining really heavily here in the last hour, and that is something that the authorities here have been fearing all week. That's the reason why this rescue mission, this attempt to get the boys out, was started this morning, because the fear was that if really heavy rain persisted, that could raise the water level in the cave and that could put the boys at risk. So that is why the authorities thought today was the prime opportunity. They've spent time with the boys trying to teach them as much as they can about the technique of scuba diving, trying to make them familiar with the equipment that they would need to wear to make it out alive, and that is why this morning they were confident to give it a go, to make a start, and 4 boys have successfully navigated that tortuous path out. They've had to navigate through really dark, narrow channels. One diver whose experienced conditions in a cave said there are parts of this journey that are like being flushed through the U-bend of a toilet because it's so narrow. You're winding around different obstructions underground, and there is rushing water, sometimes the tide rushing against the boys. So they really have surmounted some really tough challenges to get out. But the operation has paused for this evening, although as you can see there are still vehicles coming and going because there is still a need to supply more equipment here and to change teams over. The support team will be here all night regardless, and tomorrow morning they will again restart in earnest the mission to free the remaining 9 or the 8 boys and their coach. Everyone knows that although there's been some success today, and that's very positive, there is still a lot of risk, there is danger in this operation, there is a huge challenge still to accomplish to make sure that everyone here gets out safely.
Dan, we understand we now have this 10-hour break. Does that now imply that they're using the exact same dive team for the next stage?
Yes, we understand it's a relatively small team of really experienced cave divers who've come here from around the world. There are 18 of them, 13 international dive experts working with 5 of the elite Thai Navy divers, and they have been responsible for training the boys, for assessing whether they were actually ready, whether they had the ability and the strength to make it out alive, and they were the ones who decided which boys would go first. They decided to take the weakest first, the ones who they thought needed to get out first. Now they've done that today, escorting those boys on that journey that took about 9 hours probably for them to get out of the cave entirely from the cavern where they were stranded. But everyone's aware of how tricky and complicated this is, how it needs care and attention, so that dive team is off now, having some rest, having some sleep, regaining their energy, ready to come back here tomorrow, focused and ready to apply that expertise to make sure that the remaining boys and their coach can be escorted out as quickly as possible, but also as safely as possible, because there is still a lot of danger, a lot of uncertainty in this rescue attempt.
Dan, before we let you get out of the rain, whilst the team are having this break, does that mean that pumping operations will resume and continue?
Yeah, they've been pumping water almost continuously since this whole saga started more than 2 weeks ago now. Just to keep the water level in the cave stable, they've had to pump millions of litres of water a day, and that continues. And I think some of the equipment that you've just seen going in may have been more generators and more pumps, because they have to keep turning over that equipment to keep making sure that there is power to keep it running. And there is a torrent of water that's been running down from that cave where they've been pumping out for the last 2 weeks. They've even had to start digging a reservoir here at the bottom of the hill to take all that water so that it doesn't cause problems elsewhere. But it never seemed to be a realistic expectation that they could drain enough water out of the cave so that the boys would be able to walk out. You might have heard early on there was talk of just waiting, sitting this out, but that may have taken months for the water level to go down, and in the meantime there was always the risk of more rain actually forcing the water level up. There was also the option of drilling down to the boys from above, and they did drill some exploratory holes trying to find the shortest distance to reach the cavern, but they worked out that it was at least 600 metres, and the nature of the mountainous environment around here, it's really tough, steep terrain with thick vegetation, so the option of drilling was explored but looked like it would have taken a long time. So that's why the scuba diving option, the boys actually swimming out the way that they came in, the way they walked in 2 weeks ago, that's what was favoured, that's what has been put into action today, and them having proven that that can work, that's what they'll carry on doing tomorrow, and everyone hoping and determined that the rest of the group will succeed, so that everyone can celebrate when 13 people are safely out of this cave.
OK, Dan Johnson at Tam Luang Cave Complex, thank you. Well, our correspondent Nick Beek is at the hospital where the boys were taken. Nick, what can you update us with?
Well, they were certainly waiting for good news here, and they were waiting for their patients to arrive. And about 2.5 hours ago, sure enough, the medical teams at this hospital, it's the main hospital in the Chiang Rai region, received the first of their patients. We saw 2 ambulances come up to this entrance. They moved aside the railings. They sped through to the entrance. We also later heard 2 ambulances overhead, and we believe that 2 other boys were brought into the hospital through another entrance. They've been waiting for them. They've had medical teams assessing their health for the past week or so. Remember, there was a doctor down in the cave with them after they were found by the amateur British divers, and they've been assessing their condition day by day. And we heard this morning that the decision had been made to go for this rescue attempt. They believed the boys were strong enough mentally, but also, crucially, physically. In terms of how they're doing now, that is hard to assess. Certainly nothing official from the doctors and nurses here, but the indications we're getting this evening are that they're doing well, considering what has happened to them. A huge ordeal. And when you think about the path that they had to take to get out of that cave, extremely narrow in places, visibility extremely difficult as well. Impossible to see things in front of you. The fact that 4 boys are out this evening has given people a lot of hope here in Thailand.
Nick, understandably, the hospital and the authorities have been very keen to look after the privacy of the families and the boys as well. There was a lot of screening and security present outside that hospital. Has it now died down?
Certainly there are fewer members of the media here now, and obviously that's a result of the press conference about an hour ago where they said there'll be no more operations, there'll be a lull in this rescue effort, because of course, as Dan was saying there, these are specialist people. It's quite a small core of people who have the skills to get to the place where the boys have been trapped, so they need to rest overnight. We don't know what exactly is going on inside the hospital now. Certainly the parents that you mentioned, they've been at the rescue site for the past 2 weeks, and they've been kept up to date with all the information. And if they are here tonight, clearly they would have been told before anyone else what is happening. It was interesting, we heard from one of the, one source earlier on, that they've managed to have part of the hospital sealed off so that the boys could be brought in, treated, and they'd undergo routine examinations, so blood test, urine test. They'd look to see if they picked up any sort of infection due to being in that water, which is extremely dirty and murky too. So we may get more information about their condition overnight or possibly in the morning, but this is an ongoing operation. It's going to take hours, and remember, it takes the most experienced divers some 11 hours to get to the point where the boys were and back again, so this is a marathon operation.
Nick Meek, thank you very much for that update. Thank you. Nick there was just outside of the local hospital where the boys have been taken to. Well, let's speak now to Amy Sawita Lefebvre. She is Reuters Bangkok Deputy Bureau Chief. And Amy, thank you for joining us here. One of the biggest stories, possibly, that Thailand has had to deal with.
Yes, it's certainly one of the biggest story in years for Thailand, and it's a good news story so far. It's definitely a story that's brought this country together, a country that's been divided politically for many, many years. A big story, but also a good one.
Have you, whilst you've been there or in your memory, can you remember any story which has involved this level of rescue and this cooperation internationally? And also there's been a lot of military involvement in this operation.
I don't think we've seen anything on this scale in recent Thai history, really. It's been a huge operation, 1,000+ Thai volunteers, that's just Thai volunteers, and teams flying in from all over the world, Britain, Australia, the US, Japan, to name just a few. And the level of coordination involved over the past 2 weeks has been something that has been truly amazing. We've heard international teams commend the Thais for their effort, and vice versa as well. And I don't think the country's seen anything like this before.
So what have local press been saying, and how have they been covering this story?
Well, the coverage here has been pretty much blanket coverage, nonstop. And when you go out into the streets, whether it's here in the capital, Bangkok, or elsewhere, pretty much everyone in Thailand is talking about these boys. And they have been talking about these boys ever since they were first trapped inside the cave. And of course, the big highlight was when the two British divers found the boys last week, last Monday, which was news that was met with huge positive reaction, avalanche of goodwill on social media. So it's something that's really brought Thais together at this time.
Just like to know, how big is this sport of caving in the country?
Well, it is fairly popular in parts of the country, but it's definitely not a national level sport. It's not something that many people do. In fact, cycling is perhaps one of the biggest sports in Thailand. And of course, these boys who went in weren't expert cavers. They'd been in the cave before during dry season. This is the first time that they've gone in during rainy season. So they weren't experts by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, so rescue operations, we understand, resume 8 a.m. local time where you are.
Yes, the chief of the mission says that in about 10 hours, just about 9 hours from now, the rescue operation will start again to get the remaining boys and also their assistant coach out of the Tam Luang cave. And we hope to see more progress tomorrow if the weather stays on their side.
Amy, just very quickly, it has to be said that the parents have come across as being quite calm in this. Is this just within the Thai character, or, have they been more vocal and we just haven't heard this?
I think it's many factors. I mean, throughout this operation, we've seen the family kind of, cordoned to one side. They've had their own tent, their own shelter. And throughout for the most part, they've had a Buddhist monk with them, or several Buddhist monks, leading prayers, meditation, chanting, Buddhism being in Thailand. So I think that's helped the parents quite a lot, helped to keep them calm, grounded, and they've been praying for good news. And finally, the good news came that their boys were found. So I think that's a huge part of the calmness that we're seeing.
Okay, Amy Lefebvre, thank you so much for speaking to us there. Reuters Bureau Chief. You're watching BBC News. Well, let's get a little bit more on the story. And from the world of cave diving itself, an instructor, Jeff Crossley, is joining us here on the programme. He was actually one of the divers who rescued Les Hewitt from a Yorkshire cave back in 1992, and he joins us now live from Cumbria. Thank you for joining us, Jeff. Watching events taking place in Thailand, what's this doing to you when you think about what happened in Cumbria?
Well, it's the same range of emotions, really, and I think your correspondents have put it very well. It's absolutely wonderful news, but it's not over yet, and you've got to be cautiously optimistic that when they go back in to resume the rescue operation, that things will continue to go well.
In terms of conditions, are they very similar around the world once you get inside a cave, or do they differ?
They do differ from country to country. I would say that from what I'm hearing from the Thai operation, they're actually quite similar to British conditions in that you get poor visibility and there are some small passages as well. The one perhaps good thing about the conditions over there is that it's warm. It certainly wouldn't be warm over here, but that's been a big plus in helping to get the boys out.
You rescued Les Hewitt back in 1992. The team here, or rather the team in Thailand, are having to rescue children. What would be your primary concern if you were part of that team?
Well, I think that it was a very big team effort to rescue Les and another caver, Roy Dean, at the time. And I think with children, again, I think your correspondent said it already, that it's prioritising who's the weakest, who needs to go out first, who's confident, probably, who are the most confident boys. So it would be a case of putting them in the water, probably with the equipment attached to them, and giving them a trial run, not under the actual flooded part of the cave, but in the water where they are. And I think they would have worked all that out and then split them into groups to decide who was going to be the best to take out first and then carry on from there. And it appears that's what the case is, where they've now suspended operations because it is a very stressful experience searching for missing persons in a flooded cave. And then when you find them, after the initial euphoria, you realise that they're not actually rescued until they're all out. So I would say that they've obviously got a plan. They're sticking to that plan, and they'll resume again tomorrow, and hopefully it'll continue to be successful.
As a rescuer, Jeff, what goes through your mind? What pressures are you under?
Well, you've also got to think about your own safety, to be honest. But it is, as I've just said, it's a very stressful time when you are trying to get somebody out, and you're trying to be positive all the time. But you know there are serious dangers. So I think it's very much a case of focus on your own safety as well, but remain very, very positive for the casualty to give them the confidence to get out.
So what sort of warning signs are you looking for then? I mean, we know that the weakest boys were taken out first, but doesn't that increase the risk? What health signs are you keeping your eyes out for?
Well, I mean, that's difficult to say for me. I mean, I'd be speculating there really regarding health signs. Certainly, from my experience on the rescues that I've been involved with, we would maintain, we would try and maintain visual contact, eye contact, by almost swimming backwards with the ones that we brought out, 2 divers per casualty, and just looking at the eyes, keeping them focused, and then but watching for more signs of panic rather than medical issues. If the water's, I think it's quite shallow, so that again is a good thing. If the water's very deep, then it does become more of an issue physiologically.
Jeff, doesn't it add pressure if you're trying to keep eye contact with somebody you're trying to rescue and you're trying to move forward, but you're having to constantly look back to keep that eye contact? And we're hearing that these passages are just so narrow.
Yes, I mean there are sections that are narrow of most cave passages, and certainly that's one of the issues when you get to a narrow part. There's sometimes no alternative but to put the casualty through the narrow part without the guidance. I mean, you can be there, and your presence can be there, but maybe the physical contact or the eye contact might have to just be removed for a few seconds.
So how do you calm, as you describe, a casualty down? How do you calm them down if you're seeing signs of panic? What would you do?
It's a case of you would keep hold of them. You would ensure you've got that physical contact to make sure that they are, so you're reassuring them all the time, and you're also reassuring them through your eyes, to make sure that they understand that you're not panicking, that everything's okay, they're doing well, and hopefully they will respond to that in kind.
So we're dealing with children. Would you have to kind of pull them along in order to encourage them? You know, there may be that fear of water because we understand these children can't swim.
Yeah, I don't think the swimming issue is too much. It's too much of a problem actually, because they would once you get into a flooded passage, the best place to be is on the floor or thereabouts in this sort of situation. So they would be probably weighted suitably so that they're down on the floor and literally crawling or walking along the floor to get out. The children, I think, with these boys, I think we've seen from the temperament and the way they've conducted themselves, it's been absolutely amazing, really, that considering they've been trapped in the cave for so long. I think they might well see it as an adventure, and hopefully that's the way they will see it, and a bit of a challenge. I mean, they're clearly up for a challenge by the fact they've been wandering into these caves. So hopefully they'll see it like that, and they'll have that confidence that's required.
So how would you encourage a child to, what sort of communication methodology would you sort out before you enter the water? You'd say, you know, tug on the wire, or if something happens, if you're worried, if you're beginning to panic, how would you communicate with a child?
Well, you can't really communicate underwater apart from visual or signals, you can't talk to each other without specialised equipment, which you wouldn't be equipping non-divers with that sort of equipment. So you have to get them as calm and collected as possible before you start the dive. And then once the dive's underway, it's maintaining that physical presence and that visual presence so that they know that there's someone with them at all times.
Since the operation, we'll call it a successful operation of the 4 boys that we do know that have exited the cave, a lot of tributes have been paid to the diver who did lose his life earlier this week, Saman Gunan, who lost consciousness. How would you know if a child is losing consciousness?
Well, there would be no response, or they would stop moving if they were losing consciousness, and so you would have to speed things up to try and get them out. There are 2 speeds in cave diving, effectively, which are dead slow and stop. This will be a very slow, meticulous operation. But if someone is losing consciousness, then obviously you've got to do something about it. But it is difficult. If the visibility is very poor, it's one of the enemies of cave diving, is visibility. If it's very poor, then that might not be too apparent. So it's something you've got to keep an eye out for all the time. And I would say, actually, at this point, that with the Thai divers, it's a special mentions, and they've done a fantastic job. Considering it's not their remit, they're not trained cave divers. So it's wonderful what they've done and the way they've supported the operation, and been at the sharp end as well.
In terms of the gear that the rescue team and the children would be wearing, there is the risk there, isn't it, that could get damaged, and also the airline that's attached to the diver. How do you ensure that doesn't happen?
Well, as I say, I don't actually know what plan they've put into place over there regarding who wears the diving equipment or the air cylinder and where the air hose is going. I can only relate to our example, which was the casualty wore the air cylinder with the air hose, and this was part of being accompanied by 2 divers. So that's the first one was, as I said earlier, perhaps swimming backwards to a certain extent, keeping the visual and physical contact and feeding the guideline to the casualty. The diver behind was constantly making sure that the airline didn't catch on any rock projections, the line didn't get tangled on any of the equipment, which could seize the operation completely.
We now know that there is a 10-hour rest period. Why is that needed? What are they doing in that time?
Well, I think they've been working flat out. I think it's fairly obvious they've been working flat out, and I can't emphasise how stressful it will be for them, considering, especially bearing in mind that most of the divers there will not speak Thai, so they're having to constantly have language translations fed to them. And they just need rest and recuperation. But it's a good thing that the same team sticks together, because that's if the plan is working, then don't change it. And I'm sure that's what they've decided to do.
Jeff Crossley, thank you so much for the chat here on BBC News. Thank you.
You're welcome, thanks.
You're watching BBC News. If you've just joined us here, let's just remind you of our breaking story today. 4 of the 12 boys trapped in a flooded cave in Thailand have been brought out. A major operation involving international divers and elite members of the Thai Navy has been taking place to free the 12 boys and their football coach. You'll remember that they became stranded over a fortnight ago when the tunnels became waterlogged by rain. Well, British divers were called on, and they helped to find the group sheltering on a rocky ledge around 2.5 miles from the mouth of the cave on Monday. Well, that vast cave network stretches some 10 kilometres into the mountain, and the flooded tunnel is 1 mile underwater. Now, the first boy was brought out of the cave at around midday our time, and all of the 4 rescued boys are now being treated in hospital. Well, rescue efforts have been paused overnight to allow divers to prepare for the next mission. Meanwhile, the rain that the rescue team had been dreading appears to have arrived. It is, of course, monsoon season. OK, let's speak now to Andy Eavis. He's the former head of the British Caving Association, and he joins us via webcam from Hull. Andy, you've been following this story. You've been talking to us here on BBC News. This latest development, we've had 4 boys out. What's your response to that?
Euphoria. I think it's absolutely wonderful that they've got 4 out safely, and it suggests, with a great deal of luck and not too much rain, that they can get the other 9 out. So fingers crossed. But the great moment last week was actually getting through and finding the boys and finding all 13 of them alive. That was a wonderful, wonderful moment. And the second wonderful moment was getting the first of them out intact and looking pretty good. I mean, in between, unfortunately, there was this dreadful disaster of the Thai diver dying, and it just underlines the danger that there is with this type of operation. And the cave divers do realise this situation, and they will be being very, very careful and very cool and calm and collected. And you were asking earlier what they'll be doing in this period. They'll be resting. I hope that they will get as much rest as they possibly can to enable them to go back in and perform their operation both safely for themselves and safely for the people they're rescuing.
Is a 10-hour period enough to relieve that stress that the human body is put under when it comes to diving? I know it's not deep water diving. Nevertheless, there are incredible stresses being put on those divers.
I suppose one could say, no, it's not really enough. But I think there's now an element of urgency in this. I don't know quite what difference the rain will make, but I suspect quite a significant difference in making it longer underwater. So the underwater passages will become longer, the flooded sections will be longer, the airspace will be shorter. So if it's pouring with rain, the sooner they get back in and get the rest out, the better. I don't think there is a danger, sort of an immediate danger anyway, of them actually flooding out where they are and it going to the roof and really giving them a life-threatening problem. But it will certainly, the rain will make the rescuing more difficult. So I know they will think the sooner the better, but they need to rest. So it's balancing the two.
Just how fit are these chaps? And I'm assuming here that they are all men.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
How fit are these divers?
The divers are very fit. I mean, they are physically pretty fit. Rick has just canoed around Tasmania, so you've got to be pretty fit to do that. They are fit guys, but they are very, very experienced cave divers, and those two words are important. They're not just divers and they're not just cavers. They're cave divers, and it's a different mindset when you're underwater, underground. It's more of a mind exercise than a physical exercise, and you have to have exactly the right frame of mind to keep cool and calm and collected, and that's what everybody has to do. These boys are showing a wonderful fortitude, and for them to keep calm during the 9 days they were in complete darkness, it is wonderful, and that really points to the fact that they are probably going to be pretty cool and calm coming out underwater. And certainly the 4 coming out now will have obviously experienced that, and they've got out safely, and great. They are coming home. Brilliant.
You're talking there about mind exercise. Are there certain tricks that they would have taught the children from their own experience and knowledge?
Well, Jeff earlier was saying that they will be swimming them around in the pool, and they will be trying to get them confident underwater. The fact they can't swim doesn't matter very much. The fact that there's no visibility, or there's probably almost no visibility in the water, is a shame, but not a serious problem. The big problem is they have to be comfortable underwater. These boys have to be comfortable underwater, never having been with scuba gear on before. to put them underwater like that is obviously a stressful situation. And I think the fact that they are young guys is helpful. One, they're small, so they can get through the small places easier than a larger person. They can be manhandled by the divers with them easier than a larger person, and they haven't got the life experience, so they probably don't fully realise the extreme danger they're in. And those things are factors in the right direction. The fact that they got in there to start with shows that these are pretty adventurous kids, and they got in this problem because they were being over adventurous, and they've got to be over adventurous to get themselves out.
They've been down there for a fortnight, these boys. They're in a pretty weak state. Obviously, they have been fed since they've been found. But going into the water, what's the primary concern for somebody who's trying to get these boys out safely?
The absolute primary concern will be to try and keep them calm and give them every assurance they possibly can that they will be in safe hands underwater. It's the biggest danger they have by a long way is panic. If they can just keep cool and calm, they will get out safely. The gear will be good. I mean, the gear will all have been vetted by the cave divers, and it will be the best available. It will be very reliable. They will have the best systems they can possibly have. The cave divers are the best that there are in the world. So everything is good as long as the boys don't panic. The great danger is them over worrying. And as I say, there's a lot of signs to suggest that they're in a really good frame of mind to be able to handle this. And it's a great tribute to this football team that they're able to do that. That fit, young, and not worrying is great, is wonderful. I'm very optimistic that in the next few days we will get them all out. It depends on the weather. The weather is absolutely critical in this, and it won't be rushed. I mean, whether they can bring more than 4 out a day, I don't know. And clearly that's going to take another 3 days if they can only bring 4 out. But they mustn't sort of run any of the dangers that could be tempting, like putting more rescue divers in who haven't adequate experience, or trying to bring the boys out without adequate preparation.